There is a calmness that creeps over a forest on early summer evenings. The birdsong changes from energetic chirps to soft melodies. The sun is low and the air is still. Rabbits scramble out of their burrows and feed in the open. Deer emerge from the woodland. It is the hour of the huntsman. An arrow fired from a longbow whistles through the air and hits William Rufus, the King of England, square in the heart. He falls down dead. An unfortunate accident? An assassination? Or divine retribution? Legend has it that the Red King's ghost is often seen on the anniversary of his death, and a pond nearby turns red with blood. In this episode, I'm heading out to find the place where William Rufus died and discover some old Norman ruins. I'm Andy Jones, a writer and producer. Join me as I set out to discover the unusual histories and intriguing mysteries of Great Britain. In this series, I'm visiting the New Forest in Hampshire. Episode 1. The mysterious death of King Rufus. There is evidence that humans have lived in the New Forest since the Stone Age. But I want to start this series on a date that has been drummed firmly into the minds of British schoolchildren for nearly 1,000 years. 1066, the year that William the Conqueror crossed the English Channel from France, defeated Harold Godwinson at the Battle of Hastings, and claimed the throne of England. If you like, a sort of reverse Brexit with more violence, but about the same amount of ill feeling. The impact of the Norman invasion across England was enormous. In the years that follow, much changed within the country, politically, economically, and physically. To oversee his freshly acquired kingdom, William introduced a new feudal system by dismantling the old Anglo-Saxon aristocracy and appointing a selection of Norman dukes to act as the ruling class. Running the country was a busy and demanding job. One way the new king and his dukes liked to relax was hunting. A large area of wooded land to the west of Southampton and to the south of Salisbury was suggested as an ideal hunting ground for deer. Thus, in 1079, William declared that this would be a royal hunting preserve. He had some of the woodland cleared, displaced some of the inhabitants, and set some very strict laws regarding the management of the land. He gave this area the name Nova Foresta, the New Forest. But in a cruel twist of fate, 2 of his sons would die hunting in this forest. As a king, William was not popular with the English, and some Anglo-Saxon chroniclers declared that this was a just punishment for his harsh treatment of the English. So, here we go. This is a map of southern England. Now, to steal a real estate phrase, the 3 most important factors in determining the desirability and the value of a property are, repeat after me, location, location, location. And of course, for William the Conqueror, the location of the New Forest was ideal. Obviously, it was good ground to hunt in, but it was on the south coast of England, which is handy if you wanted to nip back to France and check on your other territories. But it's also only 16 miles southwest of Winchester. That's, I suppose back then, probably a half a day or a day's ride on horseback. Before the Norman invasion, Winchester, not London, had been the capital of England. And it was still a very important place. In fact, the royal treasury was there, and we'll come on to that a bit later on. Now, I'm going to change over the maps. I'm going to go to a different scale of map, and this is, I'll lay it out in front of me, a map of the New Forest, an Ordnance Survey map of the New Forest. Now, what we consider the boundaries of the New Forest to be today usually is the boundary of the National Park, and that's about 220 square miles.
and the original hunting preserve falls within that. The forest is bordered on the east by Southampton Water, and that's the confluence of the River Itchen and the River Test as they come together. To the south, you've got the Solent, which runs into the English Channel. At the north, you've got the Hampshire Downs, which touches into Wiltshire. And then to the west, as you get towards Dorset, you've got the River Avon. And that's pretty much the boundaries as laid out of the New Forest. And right in the centre, you have the town of Lyndhurst, which has long been the administrative centre of the New Forest. Now I want to head out and find where King Rufus, that's William the Conqueror's son, was killed. But first, I'm going to go to a village over on the northeast of Lyndhurst, right on the edge of the national park boundary, a little village called Ashurst.
This is the New Forest in Hampshire, sometimes called a miraculous survival of pre-Norman England. Tall trees, wandering streams, open heathland.
That's the dulcet tones of John Snagg, narrating a rather charming film on the New Forest in 1952. These days, the New Forest is a popular tourist destination. In fact, it's estimated that over 15 million people visit the national park each year. It is an area of outstanding beauty. However, when you drive through the forest, much of what you see has been shaped by human involvement. Agriculture, timber production, hunting, and of course tourism have all left their mark. However, it doesn't take much effort to get off the beaten track and discover the more ancient parts.
So this is Ashurst railway station. Before it was built in 1847, there wasn't much in the village of Ashurst, just really a few old farms. What I'm looking for is the remains of a medieval hunting lodge, and to find that I've got to walk about half a mile into the forest before we can actually cross the railway line and get to where we need to be. Interestingly, as we walk into the enclosure, there's a police car and two policemen arresting somebody. You never know what you're going to find in the New Forest. So 1,000 years after the murder of the king in the forest, crime is still happening here. Naturally, as we're walking through the woods walking through the forest on a Sunday morning, there's quite a few dog walkers out. And one of the laws that William I brought in when he declared this was going to be a royal hunting ground was the size of dog which was allowed to roam the forest. And if you go into the museum in Lyndhurst, you'll find that they've got a metal hoop. It's sort of shaped like a stirrup. And the idea was that if your dog was small enough to pass through the hoop, then it was allowed to roam in the forest. If it was larger and couldn't get through the hoop, they then removed the front three claws off of its paw to stop it chasing after deer. A pretty extreme measure. I don't think the RSPCA would agree with that these days. And funny, as I just said that, I've walked past a sign and it says, "Animals, keep your distance." I'm not sure if that means humans keep your distance from the animals or animals keep distance from humans. Do not touch, do not feed. Keep dogs under strict control. Livestock worrying is an offence. So, there we go. Still an offence in the forest for your dog to be worrying livestock. I don't think they'll remove claws though. I think it's more likely to be prosecution than a fine. Not quite sure what they mean by worrying livestock. I don't know if that means you can't go up to the horses and cows and pigs and show them the BBC News app or something like that, get them worried about world events.
Hunting on horseback was a dangerous pursuit, and not long after the Norman invasion, King William's son, Richard, was killed when he collided with an overhanging branch in woods like this. He was only 15 years old at the time, and had he survived, maybe his younger brother Rufus would never have inherited the throne.
We've got now to the bridge which crosses over the railway and takes us to where we want to be. And we've got a bit of graffiti on the wall. Slay the house down. Millie, GS and Lucy and Don were here. Open brackets, there are 2 Millies. Oh, that's interesting. Right. And Dominic loves... Oh yeah, no, I'm not going to repeat that. Okay. I'm going to come off the beaten path here. We're going to cross over a very slippery log which is over a stream. Okay, we've done that. My intention was to try and find the Norman hunting lodge, and I think I've got to the right place. Now I'd like to describe the building in front of me, but I can't because it's long gone. I knew that before I set out. What there is though is a lot of earthworks, and the sky's gone quite dark, and I've got to say I've walked into the middle of this plantation, which I'm presume I'm in the centre, so it must be very close to where the hunting lodge was, and it's very spooky. All these trees are covered in moss. It gives a sort of almost like a slightly green luminance as you look through, and they're all dead because it's the middle of winter.
This is Church Place enclosure. There are several locations like this around the forest which are believed to be the sites of former lodges. It would have been places like this that kings and nobles would have stayed while hunting.
And my next stop is I'm going to head over to where William Rufus was killed. Now, there is quite a few schools of thought on exactly where this happened. Some historians believe it was down towards the south on the Bewley estate, but there is quite famously a stone, or was a stone, just north of Minstead, which has always been claimed as Rufus Stone, where the incident happened. Now, one of the common sights and sounds in the New Forest these days is the middle-aged person who's out on a dog walk. While I was stood there a minute ago in my reverie, staring at this very ancient part of the forest, imagining what it would have been like for the Norman kings and queens, I was quite rudely interrupted by a woman behind me who was discussing very loudly the granite worktops that they were having installed next weekend.
For every head of state, assassination is always a risk. Though interestingly, across England's checkered history of the past 1100 years, only 2 or 3 monarchs have actually been assassinated. That figure doesn't include those killed in battle, and it depends on your opinion on the execution of Charles I. So the accidental death or murder of Rufus is a very significant event in the history of England. Rufus was the third of 4 sons born to William the Conqueror. He was described as being stocky in build, and the name Rufus most probably came from the fact that he had red hair. On his father's death in 1087, he succeeded to the throne of England. Like so many medieval kings, his reign was hampered with all manner of complex issues. He feuded and fought with his older brother, who had inherited the dukedom of Normandy. He struggled with rebellion and went to war with the Scots. Apart from this, he generally managed to maintain order over his kingdom. Unsurprisingly, the details of Rufus's death are very vague. Much of what is known comes from accounts that were written down well after the event, and most of the Anglo-Saxon chroniclers were more biased than a modern tabloid journalist. The most popular legend suggests that Rufus had arrived in the forest for the first day of the deer hunting season. Amongst the hunting party was Rufus's younger brother Henry, Sir Walter Tyrrell, the Earl of Warwick, and a number of Norman nobles. As the evening drew in, the party prepared to make a drive through a wooded area and dispersed into different positions. A group of deer were put up, and Sir Walter Tyrrell quickly took aim at a stag. The shot glanced off a tree and ricocheted straight into Rufus's chest. The king fell to the ground, dead. Realizing what he had done, panic overcame Sir Walter Tyrrell. He mounted his horse, fled through the forest, and left the country. The rest of the nobles, led by the king's brother Henry, abandoned Rufus's body where it laid and rode immediately to Winchester Castle. Here, Henry seized the royal treasury. 2 days later, he was crowned King of England. Back in the New Forest, Eli Parrott, an arrow maker, was out gathering firewood when he stumbled across the body of the king. With the help of some other foresters, he loaded the dead king into a cart owned by a man called Purkis. The body was then slowly driven to Winchester, where it was laid to rest in the cathedral.
So I've arrived at a pub called the Sir Walter Tyrrell. Very aptly named because, of course, Sir Walter Tyrrell is a key character in the story of William Rufus. Now, the marker stone is up further. I'm going to take a walk up there. I'm going to come off the beaten track and just go through the woods a little bit. Now, as I said before, there is some dispute as to whether or not this is actually the place where William was killed. But for the purposes of this podcast, for the moment, let's just imagine it was. And what it would have been like on that fateful evening when the king was killed. And Sir Walter Tyrrell charging through the forest here to make his escape. Now, I'm just coming up through here. I'm bending down under a big branch of a big beech tree which has fallen down, and I've just put my foot in a bit of boggy ground.
Okay, full disclosure here. Rufus Stone is easily accessible from a large car park. I decided to park at the pub and walk through the woods to make it sound more dramatic.
And here we go. It's the Rufus Stone, except if I do this, it's not stone. It's actually made of metal. And actually this metal monument actually replaces the stone monument which was put here at the end of the 1700s, and it's got an inscription on it. It says, "Here stood the oak tree on which an arrow shot by Sir Walter Tyrrell at a stag glanced and struck King William II, surnamed Rufus, on the breast, of which he instantly died on the 2nd day of August, anno 1100. That the spot where an event so memorable might not hereafter be forgotten, the enclosed stone was set upon by John Lord Delaware, who had seen the tree growing in this place. This stone having been much mutilated, and the inscriptions on each of its 3 sides defaced, the more durable monument with the original inscriptions was erected in the year 1841 by William Sturgis Bourne, Warden." So what we've got here is the metal monument which replaced the stone monument, because back in the Georgian period and the early Victorian period it had been graffitied and defaced. So even a couple of 100 years ago, people in the New Forest were graffitiing and defacing things. I wonder if they were related to the 2 Millies that had graffitied the railway bridge.
The truth about William Rufus's death will always be a mystery. But why did Sir Walter Tyrrell flee so quickly? And why did the other nobles just leave the king's body in the forest? Many historians suggest it wasn't an accident, but a calculated plot to murder the king.
One thing we do know is that over time there's been some very special visitors to this memorial, 2 of which were monarchs. Both Charles II came here and George III.
There is something majestic about the ancient forest. And I wonder what King Charles and King George thought when they visited the Rufus stone. Maybe it served as a sober reminder of how vulnerable a monarch is. So what about the ghost of King Rufus? It's said that when William's corpse was taken to Winchester, blood dripped from the cart. And every year on the anniversary of his death, the king's ghost returns to follow the bloody trail.
Tell you what, it's getting spooky now that it's almost dark. I haven't seen any ghosts, but one thing which was a little bit scary a minute ago was obviously I've just recorded a piece that you've listened to as I was walking back through the dark, through the woods here. I thought I'd just quickly play it back and make sure I'd pressed all the right buttons, and I was happily walking along when I heard some footsteps come right up behind me. It was so close I spun around convinced that somebody was stood behind me. Then I realised it was actually the recording of my own footsteps that I was listening to on the audio recorder, and I felt a bit stupid and also a bit scared.
If you're interested in the story of King Rufus, the stone is very easy to find, and it's worth visiting Winchester Cathedral, because high up on the walls of the presbytery you'll see a small wooden casket that still contains his bones. It's been a pleasure to share this story with you. If you've enjoyed it, please do subscribe to the podcast and maybe share it with your friends. In the next episode, I'll be dusting off my deerstalker hat and meerschaum pipe and searching for Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. To find out more about me and my writing, you can find me on social media or via my website, ajonesauthor.com. This podcast was written and presented by Andy Jones and is a Copia production.